Hey, welcome to Left Right Out. It's March 16th. We have some interesting stuff going on. If you remember, we'll start off, if you remember the last video I did, I talked about the weapons that were going into Ukraine, right? The in-laws, the Javelin missile systems, the Stingers, things of that nature, the, man-operable weapon systems. Interesting article came out, and this is exactly what I warned. Remember, I said this stuff is going to end up in the hands of the enemy, and it goes along the lines of something else we just heard today. So here's an article coming out of Russia. Here, Finders Keepers. This is the title of it. Watch Donbass troops train using captured Javelin in-law and anti-tank missile systems. It has a picture here of a Russian soldier. He is operating what appears to be a Javelin. There you go. I called this one as among other things, but this one is, from a tactical perspective, pretty precarious. Now, so that leads me to another analysis. So Biden has come out today talking about an aid package for them and including in their drones, which he didn't really specify what kind of drones they are. This phone goes off. He didn't specify what kind of drones, right? But you would imagine that these aren't just reconnaissance drones. These would be drones capable of carrying a small payload of munitions. And then if you extrapolate that, then where do they get the munitions? That'd probably be from us. So along those same lines, if Russia is lacking in drone technology, they're about to get a huge boost from this administration because to me, let's look in the past. All right, the same thing, a similar instance happened where the Iranians had either hacked a drone or, rendered it inoperable and it landed in Iran. And then all of a sudden they had a spur of, this happened in the Obama administration, and that all of a sudden their drone technology has gone up leaps and bounds, right? You can just use logic to see that they probably reverse engineered a number of capabilities of our drone. It was I can't even remember what drone, but it was cutting edge at the time. You can go look that up. So what I'm saying here is that you're giving these guys, we're late stages in this. This is, like I said, modern siege warfare. This is the way the Russians seemingly are going against an inferior, this is how they're going to operate in an inferior force. Now, this kind of tactic that they're using would not work well against an American style or a British style whatever you want to, military, whatever branch you want to say, like a whole MAGTF or whatever, or, any kind of, they just can't do it like this. If you go up against any of the infantry units or whatnot, we train different and fire maneuver capabilities than what the Ukrainians are. We're adaptable, and a lot of units are very adaptable. They wouldn't allow this kind of dredging on and this kind of momentum, non-momentum, just the momentum you have the opportunity to shift momentum and it will happen. So to me, the battle's already lost, right? It's whether Ukraine wants to have them earn every inch of it, right? So to me, at this stage of the battle, just giving drones is essentially, you might as well just package them up and ship them over to Russia, because that's what's going to happen. They're either going to shoot them down or they're going to capture them. I'm just going to tell you that like it is. Because and essentially you can look at it another way, that if it's a payload capable drone, what I mean is a drone that is capable of carrying ordnance that can be delivered and used in an offensive manner, then we're talking about essentially giving them jets, unmanned aerial vehicles. So they're essentially fighter jets, in my opinion. Or they are going to be looked at it like that. So are you now escalating this? Now you've entered we've hit a whole nother dimension in this war here, where we're getting it. That means we're getting involved. And what is Russia going to think about that? I don't know, but I wouldn't do it right now. If you'd have done this early in the battle, and when this battle first happened, when you had the opportunity to really stymie them at certain points, when you had a really cohesive, or at their relative peak cohesion in the Ukrainian forces, where they had an ability to shift the momentum in certain areas of the battle space, then yeah, you could have done this. I'm just, from a tactical perspective, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but now essentially you're just giving over these arms, and because this battle, we're in a siege style war at this moment, like I've been saying, and the Russians are going to do what they have to do to hit their end state, which with the end state, which they tell you what it is, what they want, and despite what Fox News and them are telling you, they want, and you can look at their terms, they want the two Donbass regions recognized as independent states. They want Crimea recognized as a Russia, as a Russian state. Um, and at this point, they could get what they want. I mean, it's just how long are they willing to starve these guys out? So, I mean, another folly by the administration, in my opinion. And you can tell this also parlays into the economic side. So I'm looking right now, we're getting ready to have the Fed come out and raise it essentially a quarter point more than likely. And the market's reacting fairly positive to this right now. And I think, a lot of the headlines are, well, there, some potential news on the ceasefire talks, which we don't know what's going on there. Who knows? But then you have some oil. The oil markets have calmed down. They've come back. But this is what I was seeing. So they're tying in the China demand, which it could have a little bit. But remember what I said before is like just because Russia can't sell their oil on the global market is not necessarily, that doesn't mean you just cut their supply, right? So they have bilateral agreements, or they're in the work, with China and India, Turkey. A lot of the BRIC nations. So China's going to soak up a lot of that supply. Well, what does that mean? That means that they don't have to necessarily go and access the typical global market. So it's just shifting supply. You're just shifting the chairs around in the supply market. So we'll still, we can still access the same amount of supply, but it's just the supply that China wouldn't otherwise soak up from other exporters. So, that's why I look at it. Unless you're actually, and there's a glut, and why wouldn't you? Because there's a huge discount to Russian crude that we've been seeing. So, this is very interesting. And then here we got breaking news: a Federal Reserve approves first interest rate hike in more than 3 years. Sees 6 more ahead. Okay. So we'll see how the market reacts to that, but it doesn't matter. We're on the last stages because this is exactly, here we go. So, on that oil market thing. So Saudi Arabia came out, and I know a lot of people were out there. You probably heard this. They're talking to China and about having a oil yuan or renminbi swap, pretty much being able, or I say swap. They pretty much sell their oil for yuan. Which, think about it, makes sense. Why would you want dollars if the oil markets you're isolating, billions of people away from the dollar? Using dollars. What do you get for dollars? Well, you can either invest in treasuries. You can come over here and buy God knows what. What do we produce? I don't know. So, the only other thing is you usually can get oil with it. So that's a huge incentive. So we are shipping out. That's where a lot of our inflation has gone over the years, is overseas, to either get cheap goods from China, or it gets played into the oil markets and other black market type stuff. And that's about to turn. So if they approve this deal, then you have a huge buyer that's no longer going to be dealing in dollars. And what do they do with their reserves? Well, they're going to de-dollarize. But what happens? That money's already out there, right? So even if the Fed starts tightening in this minuscule way, they're like shooting a quarter point and ending. It's like shooting a BB at an elephant at this point. But at the same time, you're still seeing inflation, even if they rose it to the level of inflation. It's set. They say CPI 7.9, right? We know it's greater than that, but say they rose interest rates today at 7%, you'd have a huge market correction. That's cool. But you'd still see inflation, because what's going to happen? You're going to have all these dollars that are out there floating around. You can no longer get oil. They're going to come in here, and it's going to start. It might start as a trickle. We've already seen the trickle in the real estate market and some of these other places. But you'll see these dollars come flooding in here. Ever increasingly, because they want to get rid of them. They don't no longer hold any value in the world market if you can't just go get oil with. I'm sure you can still get oil, but if it's easier to get yuan, because what do you get with yuan? At least if you have yuan, if you can get oil with yuan, you can also get a lot of manufactured goods, like real goods that you can use, real things that you can help grow your economy or increase your standard of living, where dollars, you seemingly can't do that as much anymore. So this is one of those paradigm shifts that we're trying to see, like the canary in the coal mine. This is one more little smoke cloud that's coming up, that's signaling a fire that it seems oblivious to the administration. Here it is. Your currency is starting to really crack, and the whole thing, the wheels are starting to fall off of this whole machine here. Um, so no matter what happens in the market, which this is all a farce. I don't know what the Fed, what they're smoking, because a lot of what they said just doesn't make any sense. Like they're talking the talk, or like, what do these guys do all day? I know I'm rambling, but the whole petrodollar thing is that's a precarious situation. Now you couple that with everything else going on, and it doesn't look good for America. I'll tell you that. We've isolated a lot of people, and you think about the countries that we've got in bed with each other. So you got Russia and China now, but then you also have India kind of working deals with Russia as well. You have Turkey, who is a NATO member of all things, that are kind of in line with that. You have um, I would imagine Brazil will. I don't know too much about them. I know they're part of the BRIC nation. Usually they have deals with each other there. So you think about the population of all those countries and the military capabilities of them, and it does not look good. I think we're living in I've said this for a number of years, we're living in the past, and we need to recognize, and I know people, when I say, years ago, I was like, hey, let's cut some of this budget. Let's get back on a financial fiscal responsibility. Let's have sound money or whatever. And people are losing their minds. There's un-American, blah, blah. But it's all because of what's happening now. It's because you need to be in a strong position. So when these precarious situations happen, you are the star, Walt, you have the flexibility to make certain actions or take certain actions and correct the path of the world in a sense. But if you keep on doing the things that we've done in the past, then a weakened America cannot pivot. We can't do anything. In fact, we're beholden. We've shown our critical vulnerability to the enemy, and they can exploit it. So either way, tactically, economically, it's bad. And I mean, if you don't realize now over the last 20 something years how the standard of living in this country is actually gone down. I mean, for some people, it's a bifurcated society where there's a lot of people that are living. I mean, I don't know how to tell you how many people I know that don't even own a couch at this point, that are barely getting by, Like, it's astounding in what's going on in this country. But we're told that it's great, and there is a large segment of the country that is doing all right, but the middle class has been totally hollowed out. You're either doing well or you're just barely scraping by. And it's all, like I said, the root cause of that's monetary policy. But if you keep going down those nodes, then you have societal degradation, you have corruption, which happens always in late stage empires, massive corruption. And you have a media that which would be like a propaganda apparatus, the American media that is totally oblivious, non-objective, that just keeps on parroting lies after lies. And even when they're proven wrong, eventually they never correct. They just kind of pivot slightly and assume that, that either it's changed or this is the way it was the whole time. I mean, so the level of brainwashing is in this society is amazing, and you need to step back and detach yourself and actually look at these individuals and or individuals around you, and you can really see. Like, I was thinking the other day, I was watching somebody how they were acting. Just how people pivot on, let's say, Russia, Ukraine, or Putin price hike type thing, and you can understand how, like during Nazi Germany, how they could get the masses to believe certain things. And before, I can never understand it, and most people couldn't. Like, well, how did the German people, fall in line? And whether it was just out of pure scare tactics, they were scared of what could happen. And in fact, I don't even think it was that. I think a lot of these people just bought into the lie in the groupthink, and we're constantly reinforced that this is the right thing to do. And we see it right now. And I'm not equating it to Nazism. I'm equating it to the psychosis that can be induced into a population to do really horrible things. And it's not that big a stretch to go there when you talk about people that are getting labeled in this country. People that are getting definanced, I'll call it, definanced in Canada, which this is where we look at. So that leads me to my last and final point. So if you really want a war, like Lindsey Graham's and whatever, you got to look down on the southern border right now, because there's been some news of there was some shots fired at near a U.S. consulate near the border. Cartel members. We should be at war with the cartels, and we should have ultimatums with Mexico right now, because that right there. I just saw another article about the UN came out and was talking about how journalism, and of course the Mexican president had some harsh words about it, but how journalists are being targeted down there. There's some like 55 in the last couple of years that have been killed. I mean, you think about the implications of that. But so there's a war going on down there, and we are oblivious to it, and we've left our defenses wide open. And I'm not saying, like it's always even the Ukrainian thing, there's good people down there, but there's also a lot of nefarious people. And we need to have an actual strategy down there to combat this. Otherwise, we're going to be in another world of hurt, because these guys, not only these guys are preying on us drug wise, but uh, early in the 2000s, we knew that some of these cartels were actually in talks with some of the terrorist organizations, and because it's all about money, right? I mean, they don't care. But as long as you don't mess up business, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So you smuggle in a couple of guys from the Middle East that could be establishing terrorist cells or whatever, they can do that. Or at this point, the cartels have their own, well, I'd call them cells. They're cells operating within the United States in different cities, funneling cash through illicit means, whether that could be human trafficking, that could be drugs or whatnot, and weapon systems, or, to and fro across the border, and with little resistance. And ever since I was a kid, there's even been instances of them engaging the border patrol. And that also leads me to another thing that came out in the news within this last month, was that the intelligence came out that the cartels were actually discussing being able to target, giving the okay to target border patrol agents, to target them like actually open season, not just if you have to get in a gunfight with them, but to actively target agents operating on the border. Now, that's something that needs to be discussed over what's going on in Russia, Ukraine. Instead of escalating that situation, there's a situation that's brewing on the southern border. And if you want to talk about the possibility, and we've talked about this in the past, of suitcase nuclear weapons, dirty bombs, or whatnot, that is ripe to happen down there. And you talk about what, as we start fading into the past, as our weaknesses are seen, that is when we can be exploited. That's why we need to consolidate right now, realign ourselves economically, realign ourselves militarily, and really look at the threats that are persisting around us. And I'm okay with putting a little pressure on the Pacific, because right now we have established supply lines and free people sitting on Taiwan, which we gave up Hong Kong. That's another thing we seem to be talking about. Hong Kong was a relatively free society until the Chinese really put pressure on it. But Taiwan is a free society. And if you look at the history of them, that's the, when the communists pushed them out that to the island there. But anyway, we need to, one, develop our own parallel semiconductor industry here, or just electronic industry, and we need to realign to that where we have some actual interest. Not to say that we can't humanitarianly help Ukrainians, but we need to push Lizinski to a peace accord on that regard. I know I just went all around and circled around and did all kinds of jazz, but it's stuff that needs to be seen. There's other pressing issues in this nation, or going on in this nation, and I can't even touch on them all. But it's not looking good, people. It's not looking good, and I hate to say that. We are not looked upon in the world anymore. It would be one thing, we know we're weak. We're like almost like a paper tiger at this point, just because we've been hollowed out. But at the very least, at least in the last few years, we've had leaders that were respected, that had at least a semi command presence. Like I would even, Bush, and then you go to Obama. Obama at least was coherent, and he put on an act of, at least like he had something together, right? He had people together, and whether I disagree with him or not, but this guy, Biden, and the people around him, oh my God, this is the laughing stock. This is the worst possible thing that could happen at the worst possible, probably the worst possible time. I could be saying that in a few more years, it could get worse, and hopefully we got enough people that are recognizing this. But I don't think so. I think. I hate to say it, the way the nation's going, there has to be a radical change. And going back to command presence, then you go to Trump. Trump had command presence. He had command presence, and then he also had that little bit of air where you didn't know what he was going to do, and that scared the people. It scared people here or constant the leftists, but it also scared foreign leaders, and it kept them in check and kept them where we wanted them, right? Reacting to us instead of us reacting to them. Anyway, I appreciate the support. I'd like subscribe, and help me grow this a little bit. Hopefully I can do a little bit better analysis, but I think I'm a semi-expert on military stratagem and economics, so I at least have some kind of basis of expertise in those two fields. But like, subscribe, support the channel. I'd appreciate it. I'll talk to you later. Peace.